The rain poured down hard as 16-year-old Maya hurried down the empty alleyway, her hoodie pulled tight over her head. She had just finished basketball practice and was heading home when flashing red and blue lights stopped her in her tracks. A police car screeched to a halt, and before she could react, a stern-faced officer stepped out. His eyes were cold, his grip firm as he grabbed her arm. "Hey, what are you doing here?" the cop barked. Maya's heart pounded. "I'm just going home," she stammered, but he wasn't listening. Within seconds, he was shoving her toward the dumpster at the end of the alley. Then tires screeched. Another vehicle roared onto the scene. A deep, commanding voice cut through the rain. "Get your hands off my daughter." Maya turned just as her father, Sheriff Carter, stepped out of his patrol car, and he did not look happy. The officer froze, his grip on Maya tightening for a split second before he let go. Maya stumbled back, her breath shaky, as she turned to see her father standing tall, his badge gleaming under the streetlights. Sheriff Carter's face was stone cold, his eyes locked onto the officer in front of him. "Explain yourself," he demanded, his deep voice cutting through the rain. The officer, still gripping his belt, scoffed. She looked suspicious, thought she was trespassing. Maya's hands balled into fists. "I was just walking home." She shot back, her voice cracking with frustration. Sheriff Carter took a step forward, towering over the officer. Suspicious, or just convenient? His tone was sharp, filled with something Maya had heard before, controlled fury. The officer hesitated, shifting uncomfortably. But Maya noticed something in his eyes. It wasn't just arrogance. It was fear. But why? The officer shifted his stance, his jaw tightening as rain dripped from the brim of his hat. "She refused to identify herself," he muttered, avoiding Sheriff Carter's stare. Maya's chest tightened. That was a lie. She never even got the chance. Sheriff Carter's gaze didn't waver. "That's so. Because my daughter knows her rights. And I know the law." His voice was steady, but Maya could feel the heat behind it. The officer exhaled sharply. "Look, Sheriff, maybe there was a misunderstanding." "Maybe." Carter cut him off. "You had her backed into a dumpster. That doesn't look like a misunderstanding." Maya shivered, but not from the cold. Something about the officer's unease unsettled her. Was he afraid of getting caught? Or was there something more? A second police car pulled up, lights flashing. Maya's stomach clenched as another officer stepped out, his expression unreadable. But the way he looked at his partner said it all. Something was definitely wrong. The new officer approached slowly, his eyes flicking between Sheriff Carter and his partner. Maya could see the tension thick in the air, like a storm waiting to break. "Everything all right here?" the second officer asked, his voice calm but laced with something unreadable. Sheriff Carter didn't move. "Depends. You tell me." His hands were steady, but Maya knew her father well enough to see the fire behind his eyes. The first officer swallowed hard. "Just a mix-up," he said quickly, too quickly. Maya caught the second officer's expression, a flash of something that looked like disappointment, or maybe frustration. "A mix-up," he repeated, then let out a slow breath. "Carter, can we talk?" Maya's father hesitated, then nodded. But before he could step away, the first officer tensed, his hand moving toward his belt. Maya's breath caught. Her father saw it too. And in that split second, everything shifted. Sheriff Carter's eyes locked onto the officer's hand, hovering near his belt. A flicker of something unreadable passed over the man's face. Panic, guilt, or maybe both. "Think carefully," Carter warned, his voice low and firm. The rain beat against the pavement, but the alley felt eerily silent, like the whole world had paused. Maya stood frozen, heart pounding. The second officer took a slow step forward, his expression tense. "Put your hand down," he ordered, his voice calm but edged with authority. For a moment, the first officer didn't move. Then, with a sharp exhale, he stepped back, his hand falling to his side. But something in his eyes made Maya's stomach twist. He wasn't backing down. He was buying time. And then, from the shadows of the alley, another voice spoke. "You should have stayed out of this, Carter." Maya turned sharply. A figure emerged, half hidden by the rain, and her father's entire body went rigid. Maya's breath hitched as the shadowed figure stepped closer, his face finally coming into view. A deep scar ran across his cheek, and his cold smirk sent a chill through her. Sheriff Carter's jaw clenched. "I know you," Carter said, his voice sharp. The man chuckled. "Yeah, you do. And you know exactly why I'm here." His eyes flicked to the first officer, who stiffened but said nothing. Maya glanced between them, confusion swirling in her mind. Sheriff Carter didn't flinch. "This about your brother?" The man's smirk faded. "You put him away," he muttered. "And now it's your turn to pay." Maya's chest tightened as realization hit her. This wasn't just about her. This was revenge. Then, without warning, the man reached into his jacket. But before he could move any further, the second officer grabbed his arm, pinning him to the car. The first officer took a step back, hands raised, panic flashing across his face. I didn't sign up for this," he stammered. Sheriff Carter exhaled slowly, stepping toward Maya and placing a protective hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said firmly. But as sirens echoed in the distance, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. As the sirens grew louder, the second officer tightened his grip on the man, making sure he couldn't escape. Sheriff Carter turned to Maya, his expression softening for the first time that night. "You okay?" he asked. Maya swallowed hard, nodding. "Yeah, I think so." But inside, her mind was still racing. This wasn't just about a bad cop or a random act of power. It was something bigger, something personal. The first officer backed away slowly, his hands still raised as more patrol cars arrived. Two deputies stepped out, quickly taking control of the scene. The man with the scar sneered but didn't resist. He knew he had lost. Sheriff Carter sighed, running a hand over his face before glancing at Maya. "Let's go home." Maya took one last look at the alley, the flashing lights reflecting in the rain. Tonight had changed everything. But one thing was clear. Her father always had her back.